Hello and welcome to Today in the News on Vanguard Live. I am Precious Chukudi. We give you the front pages of the papers this morning, starting off with Vanguard. Vanguard is leading with PDP begins counter court process to disqualify Tinubu. The writer says insists he's ineligible to contest presidential polls. Says $460,000 for feature nullifies Tinubu's nomination. PDP lacks originality, always copying. That's coming from APC PCC. Stories below we have on page 23 health cervical cancer Nigeria records 32 cases, 22 deaths daily. That's coming from NIMR. And on page 31 politics, Buhari will win Bauchi for Tinubu, says Lalong as Atiku Obi make fresh promises. On sports we have lamps out, Everton sacks Lampard. Stories above we have 39 Catholic priests killed, 30 abducted in 2022. That's from a report. Flood, 2 million displaced, 662 lives lost in 2022. That's coming from NEMA. Vanguard's 2023 National Economic Discourse holds tomorrow. Hostage negotiation. Court orders DSS to charge Chokumamo. You can see that on page 13. Airlines count losses. Passengers stranded as aviation workers embark on a suspend strike. All right, so let's take a look at the Nation newspaper. And the Nation is leading with Buhari's declaration in Bauchi. Tinubu is incoming president. The writer says, why not should vote for ex-governor by Lawan Bajabiamila. PDP abandoned the region to Boko Haram. There's a quote that says, our party is a party of thinkers and doers, people who can find a way where there is none. It is this spirit that we seek to consolidate when we succeed in getting the mandate of Nigerians. We can also see a photo story showing the $1.5 billion Lekki deep sea port. The president is saying that the deep sea port will boost economic recovery. And COVID-19 incoming travelers to provide vaccination evidence. Stranded passengers lament 14-hour flight delay. Stories above, we remain non-partisan. That's what INEC is saying. Electronic transmission stays. Court to DSS charge terrorist negotiator Toko Marmu. JAM registers a 92,490 candidate for UTME. FIRS net highest ever revenue of 10.1 trillion naira. Let's take a look at the Guardian newspaper. The Guardian is leading with 65 million naira loss as MPA shot Lagos port over Buhari's visit. The writer says freight forwarders kicks as cargoes get trapped. Police unleash dogs on them. Buhari commissions $1.5 billion Lekki Port, Lagos rice mill. Lekki Port can handle 4 times Apapa Tinkan cargoes. Stories below. We have air travelers stranded as narco workers down tools over poor pay. Focus on issues-based campaigns. Stop outbursts of anger. YCE Afenifere tells politicians. Stories above. Nigeria records 123 confirmed cases of diphtheria, 38 deaths. IPOP suspends Kingsley Kanu over infractions, anti-group activities. PSC denies the supporting allegation of IGP's tenure. And lastly, on the front page of the Guardian newspaper, I never made comments on northern domination of Nigeria, says Shoyinka. All right, let's take a look at the Punch newspaper. The Punch is leading with power outage disrupts APC rally, stops Buhari Tinubu's speeches. The writer says APC National Working Committee to probe incident says Bauchi rally successful. Buhari supporting Tinubu directed governors to ensure victory. That's coming from Bagudu. See a photo story. Lagos project jobs as president opens rice mill seaport. Page 5. Doctors working for highly connected people. That's coming from FUNAB graduates. Nigerians now have alternative to PDP APC. That's coming from Kwankwaso. You can see that on page 14. Stories above cash swap. CBN bars Abuja Lagos POS operators. Federal government forecasts fresh flooding in Play 2 Bayelsa orders. Aviation union strike stirs Lagos Airport Commission. And lastly, on the front page of the Punch newspaper, diphtheria, federal government deploys a response team as cases rises. And that's all we can take on the front pages of the papers. Join us after the break. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back. If you're just joining us today in the news on Vanguard Live, I am Precious Triple D. Joining me to talk about some of the stories on the front pages of the papers this morning is Mr. Dayo Akintobi, publisher of Illupeju Today, Keja Today, and Legacy Today. Good to have you join me this morning, sir.
Always a pleasure to be here. Good morning, Nigeria.
Yes, all right, let's delve in and we're talking about PDP. PDP has commenced court proceedings to disqualify Tinubu over criminal conviction, and this is coming from, after APC had also filed them to court. So what's your take on this back and forth from the two parties?
It's politics. The big prize is staring us in the face, and people are ready to do just about anything to make sure that their candidate and their party wins. As you know, politics in Nigeria has become a do or die affair, basically because it is in the political sector that the greatest opportunities for self-enhancement lie. Politics is very lucrative in Nigeria, and the presidency confers so much power, so much advantage, so much access to resources and wealth that people will do just about anything to get there. And so the two dominant parties are at brickbats. There are daggers drawn as we get closer and closer to the election. You're aware that just last week, Festus Keyamo, on behalf of the APC, filed a court case against Atiku, trying to get him disqualified or at least investigated or arrested based on this thing called Atiku Gate, which was a whistleblower's report that alleged that Atiku operated a special purpose vehicle while he was vice president between 1999 and 2007, and that the purpose of that special purpose vehicle was to divert slush funds, government money, to divert it for political purposes. And of course, if that is true, not only is it criminal, it's immoral and it's unconscionable, and whoever is found guilty of that should be brought to book. So Keyamo and the APC have taken this upon themselves to push this issue and get it litigated and brought to, and let the law take its course. So now PDP has now said, okay, well, if the gloves are off, we'll take our gloves off too. Your candidate is not a saint either. I mean, nobody is a saint, but your candidate is not a saint. So how can the pot be calling the kettle black? Your candidate as well has a lot of skeletons in his cupboard. So if you're going to pursue our candidate, we'll pursue yours as well. So they've gone and they've dredged up a case that Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu allegedly got convicted of in the United States, where he supposedly forfeited a large sum of money, $460,000, that was found to be proceeds of criminal activity. Now, I've listened to Keyamo on TV arguing the case that that forfeiture in and of itself did not constitute a crime, and that the conviction was not against Tinubu, but against the account in which the money was domiciled. Not being a lawyer, I can't speak to the legality of that argument or how cogent that argument is. I don't know. But what I can tell you is that this is just politics playing out. Otherwise, you would think about it and say, well, how come they haven't pursued these matters much earlier? Why is the whistleblower coming out now when Atiku left office in 2007? This is 2023. It's a good almost 15, 17 odd years afterwards. Why is he coming out now? What's his incentive? What's his motive? Is he being paid by somebody? Does he really have Nigeria's best interest at heart to the point that he doesn't want a bad person or an evil person to be in charge of us? If that's the case, how about all the other times that Atiku came out to run? Why didn't he speak up then? And why is it that he's waiting till now to speak up? Likewise, the Tinubu issue. Why is PDP waiting till now to bring it up, even though it's been in the public domain for a long time? But how come nobody's taking it up to the point of going to court to fight his candidacy on the basis of that conviction? So it's what Nigerians would call bad belly, whereby at this point in time, anybody is trying to do anything to get an advantage. My take simply is, look, it's too late to be throwing mud at this point, because no legal process is going to conclude in 30 days anyway. Even if they manage to go to trial, they manage to get through the first stage, there's appeal. If the appeal is concluded, there's Supreme Court. Both these matters will take years to complete in the court of law. So it's just a distraction, really. And my sense is, look, why don't both parties speak to the electorate, persuade the electorate, convince us about what you have in store for us if we are to trust you with our ballots. And let the best man win on the basis of popular acclaim. Let's not try and do technical penalty, technical reasons to disqualify people. Let's not. That to me is cutting corners. Let the best man win by virtue of the fact that he is the one who has been able to persuade Nigerians that he will do best for us. Let's not use technicalities to disqualify anybody. Nobody is clean. None of the 32 candidates will say they don't have a skeleton in their closet that if we decide to shine a microscope on their background, we will find something or the other that we find unsavory. Nobody is perfect. So all this is a distraction. All this is not going to go anywhere. Let us allow these candidates to focus on campaigning, focus on reaching out to people, selling their vision, electrifying the hearts and minds of Nigerians, and persuading us why we should trust them. Then, if we trust them and find out down the road, that's the beauty of democracy. If we trust them and find out down the road that they're unsavory people, they sold us a basket of lies, we have just 4 years with which to now correct that error. That's the beauty of democracy. You have a 4-year cycle. So if you get it wrong now, you can correct it. 4 years is not a long time in the scheme of things.
But Nigerians are very insistent that they do not want to get this one wrong because they know what they've had to go through for the last 8 years.
That's why it's incumbent upon us to give the candidates the opportunity to ventilate fully all of the things they have in store for us, and for us to now interrogate those manifestos and those promises, interrogate them properly and make wise decisions at polls. Let's not be swayed by sentiments of ethnicity. Oh, he's from my place, so I'm going to vote for him. Let's not be swayed by, oh, he's from my religion, so I'm going to vote for him. Let's not be swayed by, oh, he's from... Let us look at who is most competent. Nigeria is at a crossroads. This is a time where we cannot afford to get it wrong. So let's try and put aside all of our biases, all of our sentiments, and let's use common sense to pick the right person.
All right, so let's move ahead. And of course, workers of Nigerian Aviation Handling Company PLC NACO went on strike over non-payment of their salaries, which have obviously led to a massive flight disruption nationwide over like 14 hours. What's your take on that?
I don't like a situation where people work for 30 days for pay and they don't get their pay. I think it's immoral and it's unconscionable. If you know you can't afford to pay people's wages, tell them, don't allow them to work. Once they've put in the work and they've done it, there's a moral obligation to compensate them for the work they've put in. So I can never come down on the side of any employer who is unable to meet his obligations to employers who have fulfilled their own end of the bargain. So why would NACO sit and wait and allow the situation to degenerate to a point where the workers are so aggrieved? Even if you have liquidity issues and you can't immediately meet up, there's dialogue that should be entered into, there's promises that should be made, there's concessions that should be given to where you resolve the situation very quickly. I'm sure it's not simply that they missed one payment and these people decide to down tools. Obviously, there's been a pattern or there's been a history, which is what caused the grievance to the point that they down tools. But look at the flip side of the coin. They resolved it within 14 hours, which means the company had the means to sort it out before, but decided to take the workers for granted. Otherwise, how did they resolve it so quickly? That means they either went to look for money and paid the outstandings, or they called the union leaders and sat down with them and made certain promises. Why couldn't they have done this before? Why did it take the very destructive move? Because look at, within those 14 hours, RPC saying they lost 500 million.
Exactly.
And so many other airlines, international airlines, were stuck to where their planes landed. There was nobody to offload their cargo because NACO does boarding, they do ramp services, they do the baggage control, all that stuff. So planes landed from Turkey, from France, from the UK, and nobody to offload the baggage, nobody to disembark the passengers. No, so it was bedlam. And so it caused a disruption both for passengers traveling, airline scheduling, baggage retrieval, all kinds of chaos. So if AirPeace alone lost 500 million, I won't doubt that several billion went up in smoke in those 14 hours. Why did that have to happen? We should be proactive and not reactive. We should see these things come. First of all, we should always do the right thing anyway. A contract between an employer and an employee is sacrosanct. In exchange for you giving me 8 hours a day, 26 hours a week, I promise to pay you this. So if you fulfilled your obligation, giving me those 26 days in a month, on the last day of that month, I owe you this and I should pay. If something comes up and I can't pay, I should sit you down and get your consent to not pay you. I should get your consent and say, sorry, I have problems. Will you allow me to defer your pay? Will you allow me to pay it 2 or 3 times? Will you allow me to double it, to owe you and pay it with interest next month? We will talk to you and get concessions. But employers become so big and powerful, they become arrogant and they look at you like, if you don't like it, tough, go and find another
There are
job
people who
somewhere.
are finding jobs.
Absolutely. So employers have become a big bad gorilla to where they don't care. So when things like this happen, unfortunately, it's the masses that suffer. Unfortunately, but at the end of the day, once Narcos lost yesterday, of course, all the companies that lost money are putting pressure on Narco, and they're the ones stressing Narco. But tangibly, what was their loss? It was the businesses that suffered, it was the employees that suffered. Narco itself probably didn't suffer much loss. So I would put it and say, let our employers, especially like us in the media, we know what's happening out there. We know that the economy is tough. We know our media houses are having difficulty, but many media houses are not taking care of their journalists. They owe salaries. And the worst part is they don't even attempt to appeal to you or plead with you or try to compromise with you, sit you down and talk. As far as they're concerned, well, we don't have money, so when we have to pay you. That's not good. That's not right. And employers should try and redress that bad behavior.
Why exactly does he have to get to the strike phase before anything can be done? Because we've observed it the same with ASO. ASO has come out and say you're not working again, and there's now dialogue and everybody's meeting and they're on the negotiation table and everything. Same as NACO. This happens like time in, time out. This is what just goes on. Why can't like you said, employers actually take proactive steps before when these things eventually happen?
Well, that's because employers have a tendency to forget that employees are the lifeblood of the business. Without your staff, without your workers, your business is not going anywhere. But once you get comfortable, you're making profits, you're doing well, you begin to look at the bigger picture and you don't see the forest for the trees. You don't recognize the fact that these employees are the lifeblood of your business and you should keep them happy, you should keep them docile, you should keep them compensated, and you should keep them healthy. And so ultimately, strike is the measure of last resort. Nobody wants to strike, but by the time you see people calling a strike, it means they are at their wits' end. They have tried every other thing possible, and they are getting a deaf ear from the employer. So the NACO, the ASU, all those situations you mentioned, for example, a lot already went into discussions and disagreements and all that before the strike step was taken. That strike step is to force your hand, because the strike will ground your business. Look at the airport yesterday. The strike will affect your profits because all those airlines pay fees to NACO for the services. So if they didn't get the services, NACO was not getting paid yesterday for those hours that those planes didn't run. So NACO too will take a loss. Then there's the political pressure. There's the pressure from all those airlines on NACO and the disgruntlement. So striking employees know that is a hammer they can hold over the head of their employer because it will ground that business to a halt. It's not the best way. In some countries, in developed countries, there are some agencies that are considered essential public services that are not allowed to strike. Police can't strike, fire services can't strike. I think even airline workers, airport workers, services are essential for daily life. They're not allowed to strike. The employers are legally constrained from striking, and the employees are legally constrained from striking, and the employers are legally constrained from not treating their workers properly. So those agencies will always pay salaries. They will always meet to discuss increments. They will always make sure you get your health benefits. They will always do all the right things because the law compels them to make sure that they don't do things that will make their employees want to strike because they can't strike.
All right, so let's move ahead and talk about this one now. This is a report coming from the National Emergency Management Agency, NEMA, and they're saying that the flood disaster in 2022 left over 2.4 million persons displaced, the 662 dead. What are your thoughts on this issue, and how would you rate how the flooding in Nigeria was really handled last year?
what comes to mind first when I saw this report is that it rained in Lagos either yesterday or the day before.
Yeah,
It didn't rain all over Lagos, but it rained
in
in
some
Yaba,
parts.
Oyinbo, Lekki, and apparently it was quite heavy. No, it was on Sunday, not yesterday. It
Yeah,
rained.
Sunday
It was
actually.
Sunday. It rained, and so even though it's unusual to have rain in January, but truth be told, in a few months' time, the onset of the rainy season will be upon us again. And what happens when the rainy season comes? The dams rise, the waters in the dams rise. And when the waters in the dams rise, some dams have to release water so that their immediate communities don't get overwhelmed by water. That was the proximate cause of the flooding in Bayelsa, in Benue, in many of our communities this last year. So why NEMA is bringing up this notice now is that NEMA is seeing that the rainy season is coming. And NEMA is trying to see that let us not have a repeat. So they reeled out the figures: 641 dead, 3,000 and something displaced, so many thousand injured, so much property in the billions lost, buildings submerged, homes destroyed, properties lost. So NEMA wants to paint a stark enough picture that this is a human disaster in the making. And so let us begin to take steps now. We're still a few months off. Mother Nature gave us a warning note on Sunday that I'm coming, oh, and I'm coming soon. So get prepared. So that's what NEMA is doing. It's saying we still have a few months before the real rains come. Let's start taking steps. Let us begin to try and move out of the low-lying areas. Let us begin to clear our drainages so that excess rainwater can find somewhere to flow into the canal, from the canal to the river, from the river to the ocean, wherever it goes. Let us watch the water table by our activities, our bore wells, our washing of cars and things that seep into the ground, that soak up the ground and make flood waters not have anywhere to go. Let us move out of low-lying areas. Let us build dams to be able to capture the water that's released from, like, the Cameroonian Lagdo Dam that caused this big flood last year. There had been a proposal about 10, 15 years ago that a dam should be built on the Nigerian side along its path, so that when the water is released from Lagdo Dam, our own dam will catch that water and dam it so that it doesn't flood into the communities. There was some attempt to build that dam. Politically, it didn't happen. So it's not too late to begin to look at building additional dams that will capture water and stop it from going into the community. And of course, those dams are useful for things like generating electricity as well. So the bottom line is this: NEMA is telling us now, especially the state governments, because as individuals, there's little we can do. We built our houses when we built them. If we live in low-lying areas that are flood prone, there's little we can do to carry our house and take it to a higher area. We can't do that. So as individuals, there's little we can do. But governments, state governments, local governments, have environmental impact steps that they can take, from sandbagging. I'm not a geologist, so I really can't tell you. I'm not an environmentalist. I really can't tell you the steps. But there are things that government as an authority, like I talked about, clearing drains and drainage channels, and maybe demolishing houses that are built on water channels that inhibit the free flow of water. But a stitch in time saves nine. So NEMA is putting out a warning that let's not get caught flat-footed like we did last year, that cost 600 plus precious Nigerian lives and all that loss of property and injury to human souls. Let us take the steps in time enough to make sure we can mitigate the effects of the rains when they come later in the year.
Last year, we had some back and forth between the federal government and some states on the allocation of ecological funds to tackle the floods. Now, what steps do you think we can take to, tackle issues on mismanagement?
Well, that goes back to this whole notion of restructuring. Now, who owns the waterways? I remember Lagos at one point was fighting with the federal government. I think during Asiwaju Tinubu's day, Lagos was fighting with the federal government about the right of waterways. Who is in charge? Who controls waterways? And that is still a problem, which is part of why that argument about restructuring is still very valid. Is that when you're talking of mismanagement, the buck is being passed. When it becomes a thing that you have to spend money, they will say it's the federal government. When it comes to a thing where you have to receive money, the states will be fighting, oh, it's us, it's us, it's us. So they want the ecological funds so that they can dispense or disburse the money the way they choose. But when it comes to that, the federal government is saying, yeah, but you don't take responsibility for the waterway, so we'll give it to you, but we give you this. How do you spend it? Accountability. How do you use it to do the things that will protect your people? It's not that you should take it and go and use it to pay salaries. It's not that you should use it to pay running costs. Once the federal government has given the money for the ecological fund, there's very little oversight about how the state government spend it. So the federal government is looking at it and saying, but we gave you all this money, so how come your communities are still submerged now? What did you use the money for? We gave it to you. And the state government is saying, well, look, it is our business how we spent it. I mean, we've done certain things to try to mitigate the environmental degradation caused by flooding. So I think it boils down to this issue of autonomy of each state to be able to run its own affairs. And that's what the whole restructuring is all about. Such that to begin with, this ecological fund would be with the states. They would be the ones to know how to apportion it and allocate it. And they're not answerable to the federal government, they're answerable to their own people. So their own people are the ones who will hold them accountable and say, well, you had this money to protect us, you didn't do it. So remember what I said, 4-year cycle. 4 years, you get a report card. And if that report card isn't what the people want it to be, they know what to do about it. So I don't quite think that the way we are set up now, structurally, is beneficial to such initiatives in terms of helping the people when we have situations like this.
All right, so let's take a look at Mr. and Mrs. And Mr. is speaking today. He says, but Lizzie, the bedroom is on the third floor, and they're actually wearing, like, Mrs. is wearing a wedding gown, and Mr. is wearing like a suit. And then Mrs. replies and says, well, it's the tradition, you must carry me to the bedroom.
Yeah,
and she's quite chubby.
Okay, so it looks like they probably renewed their vows after so many
years.
Yeah. Perhaps when they first got married originally, she was still slim enough that Mr. was able to carry her. But now she's added a bit of weight, as we all do. In our middle ages, we all develop age spread. So she's now wants to pepper Mr. and say, you must carry me up these 3 flights of steps. Well, good luck to him. I wish he's back a lot of luck.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Daya Akintobi, publisher of Liquidity Today, Likeja Today, and Lekki. Thank you for sharing your thoughts with us this morning.
Always a pleasure to be here.
Also, remember that you can equally like, share, and subscribe on all our social media platforms showing on your screen. You can go to our website, www.vanguardindia.com, to find out more. I am Precious Chukudi, and thank you for watching.